The vast Sahara Desert sprawls endlessly across North Africa, a blistering ocean of sand that looks utterly lifeless at first glance. But hidden beneath its scorching dunes lies a stunning secret: the traces of a once thriving, advanced civilization that defied the desert's wrath. These people carved out trade routes, built gleaming cities, and perfected survival in one of Earth's harshest environments. This is the story of the Garamantes, Africa's forgotten kingdom, an ancient power that's rewriting everything we thought we knew about early civilization. For over 1,000 years, from roughly 500 BCE to 700 CE, the Garamantes ruled over an empire that spanned hundreds of thousands of square kilometers in what is now Libya, Chad, and Niger. While Rome was conquering the Mediterranean and China was building its Great Wall, deep in the heart of the Sahara, a remarkable people were creating their own legacy of innovation, warfare, and cultural achievement. The first Europeans to encounter evidence of the Garamantes were not archaeologists or historians, but rather puzzled explorers in the 19th and early 20th centuries. They discovered mysterious ruins scattered across the desert, crumbling stone structures, elaborate tombs, and, most intriguingly, the remnants of an ancient irrigation system so sophisticated it rivaled anything built by their contemporaries. These early discoverers could hardly believe what they were seeing. How could such an advanced civilization have existed in one of the world's most inhospitable environments? The mystery deepened when researchers began translating ancient Roman texts. The Romans, it turned out, knew about the Garamantes. Classical writers like Herodotus, Pliny the Elder, and Tacitus all mention this desert kingdom, describing them as fierce warriors who rode four-horse chariots and controlled the trans-Saharan trade routes. The Romans called them barbarians, but their accounts revealed grudging respect for a people who could not only survive in the desert, but actually thrive there. According to Roman sources, the Garamantes were master charioteers, who could appear out of nowhere across the desert sands, launch devastating raids, and then vanish back into the dunes before any retaliation could be organized. They were described as having dark skin and wearing elaborate clothing that suggested wealth and sophistication. Most importantly, they controlled access to exotic goods from sub-Saharan Africa: gold, ivory, precious stones, and even wild animals for Roman amphitheaters. But who were the Garamantes really? For decades, they remained more legend than history. Their existence confirmed by Roman accounts, but their actual achievements shrouded in mystery. This began to change in the 1960s, when archaeologists started systematic excavations in the Fezzan Basin of Libya, the heart of ancient Garamantian territory. What they discovered was nothing short of revolutionary. The Garamantes hadn't just survived in the Sahara, they had transformed it. At the center of their empire lay Garama, their capital city, whose ruins reveal an urban center that once housed tens of thousands of people. The city featured defensive walls, administrative buildings, residential quarters, and industrial areas where metalworking and other crafts were practiced on a massive scale. But perhaps the most impressive discovery was their irrigation system. The Garamantes had constructed a network of underground channels, called foggaras, stretching for over 1,000 kilometers across the desert. These channels tapped into fossil water aquifers deep beneath the sand, bringing life-giving water to the surface where it could support agriculture, livestock, and urban populations. The engineering required for this feat was extraordinary, involving precise calculations of gradient and flow, sophisticated construction techniques, and maintenance across vast distances. This irrigation network supported an agricultural revolution in the heart of the Sahara. The Garamantes grew wheat, barley, millet, and dates. They raised cattle, goats, and sheep. Archaeological evidence shows they had developed specialized tools for desert agriculture and had created a food surplus large enough to support not just farmers, but also craftsmen, warriors, traders, and administrators. In essence, they had created an oasis civilization that could sustain complex society in one of Earth's most challenging environments. The sophistication of Garamantian society extended far beyond agriculture and engineering. Archaeological excavations have revealed a complex social hierarchy, with elite burial sites containing elaborate grave goods, jewelry made from gold and precious stones, fine pottery, weapons, and imported items from across Africa and the Mediterranean. The Garamantes were clearly connected to extensive trade networks, serving as middlemen between sub-Saharan Africa and the Roman world. Their military capabilities were legendary. Rock art throughout the region depicts Garamantian warriors in horse-drawn chariots, armed with spears and shields. These chariots, adapted for desert warfare, gave them unprecedented mobility across the Sahara. They could strike quickly at oasis settlements, raid caravans, or launch surprise attacks on Roman outposts before disappearing back into the vast desert that served as their fortress. The Romans learned to respect Garamantian military prowess the hard way. In 19 BCE, Roman general Cornelius Balbus launched a major expedition into Garamantian territory, capturing several towns and claiming victory. However, Roman control over the region proved temporary. The Garamantes regrouped, adapted their tactics, and eventually forced the Romans to negotiate. Rather than conquer them, Rome found it more practical to maintain diplomatic relations and trade agreements with this desert kingdom. Archaeological evidence reveals the cultural sophistication of Garamantian society. They developed their own distinctive art styles, pottery traditions, and architectural forms. Rock paintings throughout their territory depict not just military scenes, but also religious ceremonies, daily life, and interactions with the diverse peoples who lived within their empire. The Garamantes appear to have been remarkably cosmopolitan, incorporating influences from across Africa while maintaining their own unique cultural identity. Their religious practices remain partially mysterious, but archaeological evidence suggests a complex belief system that honored both ancestral spirits and natural forces. Elite burial sites contain elaborate ritual objects, and some settlements feature what appear to be religious or ceremonial structures. The Garamantes seem to have developed sophisticated concepts of kingship and divine authority, with rulers who combined political and spiritual power. Trade was the lifeblood of Garamantian civilization. Their strategic location made them natural intermediaries between the wealth of sub-Saharan Africa and the markets of the Mediterranean world. Caravans crossing the Sahara had to pass through Garamantian territory, and the kingdom grew wealthy by controlling and taxing this trade. They exported gold, ivory, precious stones, exotic animals, and slaves northward, while importing manufactured goods, luxury items, and ideas from the Roman world. This trade relationship was mutually beneficial, but also created dependencies. The Garamantes needed Roman goods and markets, while Rome relied on African products that could only be obtained through Garamantian trade networks. This economic interdependence helped maintain peace between the two civilizations for several centuries, despite occasional conflicts. However, success contained the seeds of the Garamantes' eventual decline. Their sophisticated irrigation system, while remarkable, was ultimately unsustainable. The fossil water aquifers they tapped were finite resources that had accumulated over thousands of years, but were being depleted faster than they could be replenished. As water levels dropped, the foggaras required increasingly expensive maintenance and eventually began to fail. Climate change also played a role in their downfall. The Sahara continued its long-term desiccation process, becoming increasingly arid and hostile to human habitation. What had once been marginal but workable agricultural land became impossible to cultivate. The delicate balance between human ingenuity and environmental resources that had sustained Garamantian civilization for over a millennium finally tipped toward collapse. Political changes in the wider world accelerated their decline. The fall of the Western Roman Empire disrupted traditional trade networks, while the rise of Islam brought new powers and different trade routes to North Africa. The Garamantes found themselves increasingly isolated and marginalized, their strategic position less valuable in a changing world. By the 7th century CE, the great Garamantian cities had been largely abandoned. The desert reclaimed their agricultural fields, sand covered their buildings, and their sophisticated civilization faded into legend. The knowledge of their engineering achievements was lost, their political systems forgotten, and their cultural contributions overlooked by later historians, who focused on more familiar Mediterranean civilizations. The rediscovery of the Garamantes in modern times has profound implications for our understanding of African history and human adaptation to extreme environments. Their civilization demonstrates that complex societies could emerge and flourish in the most unlikely places, given sufficient ingenuity and determination. They challenge Eurocentric assumptions about where and how advanced civilizations develop, showing that Africa has always been home to sophisticated cultures and remarkable achievements. Today, climate change and desertification threaten many parts of the world, making Garamantian innovations increasingly relevant. Their water management techniques, agricultural adaptations, and sustainable living practices offer insights for modern communities facing similar environmental challenges. The Garamantes proved that humans can thrive in harsh environments, but they also demonstrated the limits of that adaptability and the importance of sustainable resource management. The story of the Garamantes reminds us that history is full of forgotten civilizations whose achievements deserve recognition and study. In our interconnected modern world, we often assume that important developments must have occurred in well-known centers of civilization. The Garamantes show us that remarkable human achievements can emerge anywhere, given the right combination of necessity, innovation, and determination. Their legacy lives on in the archaeological sites scattered across the Sahara, in the genetic heritage of modern North African populations, and in the continuing inspiration they provide to those who study human adaptation and resilience. The lost kingdom of the Garamantes stands as testament to the ingenuity of our species and a reminder that even the most challenging environments can nurture extraordinary civilizations.